Welcome back. Tonight I'm taking you into the mountains of Takayama. A shrine older than most empires waits there, wrapped in cedar shadows. For centuries, locals whispered one rule: never be there when the sun disappears. 3 years ago, one man broke that rule. He brought his camera. He never returned unchanged. The place is called Yamakagi Ginga. Officially, it's a forgotten shrine. Unofficially, it's a cage, a prison for spirits no priest ever dared set free. Imagine walls not built of stone but of ritual, prayers locking the dead in place. Then the last priest died, and the locks fell silent. That's when strange things began. Voices calling hikers by name, though no one was there, pale figures drifting in mist, lights flickering where no lanterns burned. Authorities posted warnings: don't stay after dusk, but explorers love breaking rules. And one of them, a young photographer named Kenji, thought the warnings were superstition. Kenji wasn't reckless. He was careful, ambitious, known for chasing forgotten places with his lens. His followers wanted mystery, beauty tinged with danger, and this shrine promised both. So he packed his gear, ignored the silence of locals, and hiked alone. The trail swallowed him in a mist thicker than breath. Before I take you further, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? And what time is it there? Because some stories, especially the ones about places you should never enter after sunset, feel different depending on the hour. Tonight's will cling to yours. Kenji reached the shrine just as the sky turned gold. The building sagged with moss, lanterns toppled in the dirt, but it was beautiful, perfect for his camera. Through his lens, the light softened, shadows curved just right. He thought he'd found a masterpiece. He didn't realize the masterpiece had found him. The forest was silent, no birds, no insects, only the weight of stillness pressing against his skin. His first shots looked stunning, too stunning. Lines too sharp, shadows too deliberate. When he reviewed the images, faint shapes appeared in the background, figures blurred but human, figures he hadn't seen with his eyes. He blinked, shook his head, blamed it on mist, but every new photo added more shapes. At first, just one or two in the distance, then dozens crowding closer. He snapped compulsively, adrenaline tightening his hands. The camera captured them. His eyes couldn't, and still, he felt them watching him breathe. Then came the voice, low, familiar, impossible. Kenji. It wasn't shouted, just spoken, as though someone stood beside him. He froze. It was his grandmother's voice, dead for 5 years, the one who had encouraged his photography, the one he missed most, and it came from the shrine's half-open door. Kenji's chest tightened. His grandmother's voice was tender, coaxing. Come inside. He raised his camera, aimed at the shrine's interior. The shot froze his blood. Figures packed the darkness, lined like prisoners waiting to be released. He looked up. The shrine was empty. Only his camera insisted otherwise, and it never lied. His camera grew cold, ice against his skin. Every photo now revealed faces pale, blurred, some weeping, some twisted in rage, dozens, maybe hundreds, all turned toward him. He stumbled back, breath fogging in air suddenly too cold for October. The mist thickened, swirling with deliberate rhythm, circling him like predators. The voices multiplied, not just his grandmother now, but strangers, whispering, pleading, commanding, "Stay with us, Kenji. Don't leave. We've been waiting." His pulse hammered. He tried the path home, but the trail dissolved into mist. Every turn brought him back to the shrine. The forest had folded in on itself. Panic clawed his throat. He prayed, desperate, fumbling for childhood chants his grandmother once taught him. The effect was instant. The whispers turned harsh, furious. The figures recoiled in his photos, writhing like smoke against glass. For a moment he thought he'd found protection. For a moment, the air cleared. But then he noticed something worse. Among the ancient robes and pale faces, one figure stood out, a man in jeans and a dark jacket. Modern, recognizable, another photographer, a fellow explorer who had vanished 3 months earlier. Search parties never found him, but here he was, trapped, eyes begging for help. Kenji realized the truth. This shrine wasn't abandoned. It was fed. Every explorer, every hiker, every photographer who came searching for beauty left something behind: their image, their essence, caught between worlds. His camera wasn't capturing spirits, it was offering him to them, and the sun had already set. Kenji arrived in Takayama just as the mountains swallowed the sun. The station bustled with tourists heading for inns and hot springs, but when he asked about Yamakagi Ginga, conversations turned brittle. Shopkeepers stiffened, smiles faltered, and one man waved him away without a word. Finally, a stooped tea vendor leaned across the counter. "That place does not welcome visitors," he murmured. "It does not bless, it binds." His wrinkled hand trembled as he poured steaming tea into a chipped cup. He explained in fragments: violent deaths, restless spirits locked to the shrine, priests who once kept them calm with daily rites. The last priest had died 5 years ago. Since then, dusk brought voices, strange lights, disappearances. Kenji listened, heart pounding beneath a polite smile. Every warning only fed his hunger. Haunted places brought attention, and attention brought fame. He imagined his images, mist over cedar beams, glowing lantern ruins shared by thousands. The tea vendor gripped his wrist suddenly, his voice dropping lower. "If you hear your name, young man, do not answer, no matter what voice it takes." Kenji pulled free with a laugh he didn't feel. He told himself these were just old beliefs. Yet as he walked through the town's narrow lanes toward the trailhead, he noticed the way people glanced after him. Not curiosity, pity. By the time he left the last street lamp behind, stepping into the forest's dark mouth, his chest buzzed with adrenaline. The old man's words lingered like an aftertaste. "It does not bless, it binds." The trail started wide and easy, lined with cedar trunks that rose like black pillars. The ground was soft with pine needles, muffling his steps. He stopped to photograph how the light fractured through the branches, amber streaks against the mist rolling low across the forest floor. Beautiful, perfect. But when he lowered the camera, the silence pressed in. No birds, no insects, no forest chatter, only his breath and the crunch of needles. The deeper he walked, the more the trail narrowed. Branches clawed inward, blotting out what little daylight remained. The mist thickened, curling in deliberate patterns, swirling as if stirred by something unseen. He raised his camera again. Click, shapes, shadows like figures stood faintly in the frame. He froze, glanced up. Empty trail. Another click. More shadows, closer this time. His stomach nodded. "Exposure trick," he whispered, though his voice cracked. "Just the light." His watch read 5:10, sunset fast approaching. He tried to steady himself by imagining how his followers would react to these shots. Eerie, cinematic, unlike anything he'd posted before. But beneath the ambition came a quieter thought. The forest wasn't empty, it was watching. Every step forward felt trespass, every shutter click, a signal that he'd been noticed. Ahead, the trees parted just enough to reveal stone lanterns, broken and toppled, their mouths filled with moss. Beyond them, a roofline sagged under the weight of centuries. The shrine. Kenji exhaled, half exhilarated, half afraid. The air grew colder, the silence grew heavier. The forest no longer felt empty, it felt expectant. The shrine loomed from the mist, wooden beams dark and warped, roof edges fringed with moss like green flames. Stone steps, slick with damp, led up to doors that gaped a hand's width open. Lanterns lined the path, their toppled forms resembling broken faces. Kenji felt his chest tighten as he raised the camera. Click. The frame glowed with beauty, mist curling like smoke, trees arching like sentinels, the halls staring from the shadows. He scrolled through the display. In the corner of one frame, faint and blurred, stood a figure. He swallowed hard, snapped his head up. Nothing. Another photo, another figure, clearer this time. A woman, pale, hair long and black, face tilted toward him. He muttered, "Light trick, lens issue," but his own voice sounded brittle. The silence pressed harder. He heard his breath fogging in the cold. Gooseflesh prickled his arms. He fired another burst of photos, the shudder echoing in the heavy air. The figures multiplied, always in the periphery, always closer. His throat tightened. The doors creaked faintly, the sound almost lost in the stillness. Inside, darkness rippled. His grandmother's lullabies floated through memory unbidden, and then, clear as day, her voice came from that shadowed hall. "Kenji." He stumbled back, nearly dropping his camera. His chest constricted. Rationality screamed it was grief playing tricks, echoes bending in the woods. But every note of that voice was hers, every syllable carved into him like truth. And the old man's warning returned in a rush. "If you hear your name, do not answer." Kenji. The voice again. Gentle, familiar. His grandmother, gone 5 years, yet calling from this ruin at dusk. He gripped the camera like a shield, sweat chilling his palms. The hall's darkness pulsed. He raised the lens, forcing himself to look. Click. The display lit. His breath hitched. Inside, rows of pale figures stood shoulder to shoulder, translucent but facing outward, facing him. He spun toward the open doors. Blackness, empty air, yet the screen showed otherwise. His stomach churned. Another photo. More figures, their heads tilted in unison. His chest hammered, as if each beat might burst through bone. "Kenji, come inside." The voice slid closer, warm and cold at once. His knees bent, body leaning forward without permission. He caught himself only when the camera burned against his chest, metal freezing, biting skin like ice. He gasped, stepping back hard, stumbling onto the steps. He scrolled through the gallery with shaking hands. Each frame showed the same nightmare. Spirits gathered, growing clearer, hungrier. His whisper came out cracked. Not real, just light, but he knew better. These were not tricks of exposure. These were prisoners. The silence broke into a chorus of faint whispers, names he didn't know, voices layered like threads in a net. The forest's air thickened, the warning replayed in his head, sharp now, cruel, do not answer. But hadn't he already? A step forward, a glance at the hall, a tremor in his voice when he muttered her name. That was answer enough. The shrine knew him. His name rippled now from every direction. Whispered, shouted, mournful, eager. Kenji, Kenji, Kenji. He clutched his camera to his chest as if it were a lifeline. Mist swirled higher, licking at his knees like grasping fingers. He lifted the lens one more time. The screen glowed, and his heart stopped. Among the pale-robed forms was a figure in modern clothes. Jacket, jeans, head bowed slightly. The face tilted just enough for recognition. Tishi, the photographer who vanished 3 months ago. Kenji's throat went dry. He whispered, no, but the evidence glared back from the screen. Tishi was here, not alive. The mist tightened its grip, circling like water around prey. More faces pressed into each photo, some ancient, some disturbingly new. A hiker in nylon gear, a young woman in contemporary clothes, a man in a baseball cap, all vanished souls drawn into the shrine's prison. The whispers sharpened into pleas. Stay with us. Don't leave. We've been waiting. His pulse thundered. He spun, searching for the path back down, but every direction ended the same way, with the shrine at his back, the hall at his front, a cage of mist. He stumbled against a toppled lantern, breath ragged, sweat freezing against his skin. The camera vibrated faintly in his hands as though alive. The display flickered, showing not just watchers but movers, closer, reaching. Kenji's stomach twisted with the truth. He wasn't photographing the shrine was photographing him. His ambition had baited him, and Yamakagi Ginga had decided it was time to take its picture. Kenji's hands trembled so hard the camera nearly slipped from his grip. The screen flickered once, then steadied, showing the shrine doors wide as if inviting him in. Yet when he looked up, the opening was barely a crack. His breath fogged white in the cold. The forest should not have been this frigid in October. Kenji, the voice was softer now, coaxing, almost tender. He swallowed hard, backing away, but every step landed him closer to the lantern path. The mist bent his movements, herding him back toward the shrine. He spun left, blocked, right, blocked again. No matter where he turned, the structure loomed closer, its roofline rising like jagged teeth against the twilight. His rational brain begged for explanation, exhaustion, hallucination, lens flare, sound distortion. But another voice whispered inside him, raw and primal, run. Then the camera buzzed faintly. He raised it without thinking. Click. The display showed figures lined along the path now, heads tilted, mouths open in silent cries. He turned his head. Nothing. The display. Everything. One figure lifted a hand in the photo, palm stretched outward. Another mirrored it, then another, until every ghostly face was reaching. The voices merged into a single question, layered from dozens of throats. Why do you turn away? His legs locked. Fear kept him pinned, as the mist pressed against his knees, colder, heavier, hungrier. He thought of the shopkeeper's warning again, bitter and sharp in memory. This shrine didn't bless, it bound, and now it wanted him bound too. Kenji forced himself to tear his eyes from the glowing display. He shoved the camera into his bag, zipped it, as though hiding it could erase what it had shown him. But the whispers continued, clawing at his ears, some mournful, some eager, others chanting his name until it blurred into a drone. He staggered toward the cedars at the edge of the clearing, but each step stretched longer, the distance warping. It felt like walking through water. No matter how far he moved, the shrine remained fixed in his periphery. The air shifted suddenly, pressing against his chest. His grandmother's voice rose again, warm, pleading. Kenji, don't leave me here. His heart cracked at the sound. She had raised him when his parents worked long hours. She had believed in his art. Hearing her now was like reopening an old wound. But another whisper slithered through the chorus, deeper, rasping. We will wear you. We will walk again. His stomach lurched. These weren't just voices. They were bargaining, promising belonging, threatening possession. The shrine wasn't just prison. It was feeding ground. Every visitor, every camera, every shutter click weakened the walls and gave them access. He stumbled against a cedar trunk, gripping its rough bark to ground himself. A faint symbol carved into the wood pulsed under his palm, glowing faintly, resisting the chill. For one breath, the whispers thinned. The forest wasn't entirely lost. There was still protection here, fragments of rituals long abandoned, but could it last the night? The whispers surged again, louder, overlapping. Kenji pressed his back to the cedar, gasping, as frost bloomed across the ground in thin, jagged veins. He risked a glance at the camera's display. The figures had multiplied, packed shoulder to shoulder, their faces now sharper, teeth bared, eyes hollow, lips frozen mid-chant. Among them, Tishi appeared clearer than before. His mouth opened, closed, forming words Kenji could almost read. Then faintly, a voice rose above the din, modern, human, desperate. The photos destroy them. Kenji's heart jolted. It was Tishi. Not just an echo, not a trick, a warning. But before he could act, the screen warped. Tishi's figure blurred, distorted, swallowed by the pale tide of spirits. The camera burned hotter now, vibrating in his bag, demanding to be used again. Kenji ripped it free. The lens pointed at the shrine automatically, as though pulled by strings. His finger hovered over the shutter. He didn't want to. He shouldn't. But his hand twitched, compelled by something that wasn't his will. Click. The door in the frame had opened wider. Click. The figures leaned closer, arms extended. Click. One pale hand now pressed against the inside of the lens, as if trying to push through. Kenji staggered, dropped the camera to the dirt. Its screen flickered violently, white static spilling across it like snow. The whispers became screams, and then silence. The forest froze. The shrine pulsed with a breath not its own. And Kenji realized with horror, he hadn't trapped them in his photos. They had trapped him in theirs. The silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. Kenji crouched over the dirt, staring at the camera's screen. His reflection stared back at him, faint, warped, trapped behind static like glass. His own face, but paler, hollower, as if the lens had stolen part of him. He scrambled backward, heart slamming. The cedar grove shimmered faintly, protective, but he was already inside their game. A new voice seeped through the air, clear as a bell. "Stay, Kenji. You belong to us now." The doors of the shrine groaned open another inch. Cold air spilled from inside, thick with the scent of incense and rot. Figures shifted in the mist, no longer faint but solid, stepping forward. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like puppets pulled by invisible strings. Kenji yanked the camera again, intending to smash it, but the moment his fingers wrapped around it, he felt something slide beneath his skin like claws hooking into nerves. The device hummed, his pulse faltered. He dropped it again, gasping. His breath fogged white. The camera's screen blinked, and this time instead of spirits it showed him, not his reflection, a perfect image of himself, standing in the shrine doorway, smiling blankly. His stomach lurched. He looked up. The doorway was empty. He looked back at the screen. His double stepped forward. The whispers surged into laughter, high-pitched, layered, mocking. Kenji stumbled back, desperate, eyes darting for escape, but the truth settled over him, like ice. The shrine didn't just bind spirits, it replaced the living. Kenji's chest tightened as he pressed himself deeper into the cedar grove, the only barrier keeping the swarm from closing in. His double still stared at him from the camera screen, grinning faintly, lips moving in silence. He couldn't hear the words, but he could feel them vibrating through his bones. They were promises, or maybe commands, threading straight into his mind. The grove trembled. The protective carvings etched into the trees flickered like dying embers. The air thickened with frost, stinging his lungs each time he drew breath. Then footsteps. Not spirit echoes, but heavy, deliberate. Kenji's head snapped toward the trail. Through the mist, a figure was emerging, walking straight toward the shrine. For a heartbeat, hope surged. Another hiker. Someone real. But as the shape drew closer, Kenji's blood turned to ice. The man's posture was stiff, his arms limp at his sides, as though strung on invisible wires. His face caught the faint light of the camera screen, and Kenji's stomach dropped. It was Tishi, or what was left of him. Skin waxy, eyes clouded white, mouth opening and closing as if mimicking speech but producing only static. The spirits parted to let him through, whispering louder, chanting in harmony. Join him, be with him, become like him. Kenji's knees buckled. This wasn't just about photographing the shrine, it was recruitment. Every missing person, every vanished explorer, had become part of the collection, and now with Tishi leading the way, they were ready for him to join. The sight of Tishi's hollow eyes rooted Kenji to the ground. His camera trembled in his hands, the glowing screen capturing what the human eye should never see. Tishi moved closer, his steps unnaturally steady, as though strings pulled his joints into place. The mist wrapped around him like a shroud, guiding him forward, presenting him like an offering. Kenji wanted to scream, but the sound caught in his throat. Instead, he whispered, "Tishi?" The figure paused, head tilting in a grotesque mimic of curiosity. For a heartbeat, Kenji thought he saw recognition flicker across the lifeless face. Then the mouth opened wider, jaw unhinging unnaturally, and a flood of whispers poured out, not Tishi's voice, but dozens of others speaking at once. Men, women, children, voices from centuries of death, all echoing through the forest in one horrible chorus. Kenji staggered back into the protective grove, clutching the cedar trunk for balance. The carvings pulsed faintly, as though the tree itself was straining to keep the barrier intact. The spirits pressed harder now, desperate, their translucent forms rippling against the boundary. And then, through the cacophony, one voice rose above the rest. It wasn't angry, it wasn't pleading, it was calm, cold, and commanding. He brought the camera. He knows the way. Kenji's blood froze. The camera wasn't just a window, it was a key, a tool that didn't just let him see them, it let them see through him. And now they wanted him to use it. Kenji's hands shook so violently that the camera nearly slipped from his grip. The thought churned in his head. If the camera was a key, then every shutter click wasn't just documentation, it was invitation. Proof that he had been slowly unlocking the prison they'd been confined to for centuries. The figures pressed closer, their faces stretching grotesquely in the mist, like paint running down glass. One childlike spirit pointed toward him, its mouth opening in a silent scream that sent a vibration through his chest, rather than his ears. The others followed, their whispers swelling into chants, urging him to lift the camera, urging him to complete the bridge. Kenji lowered the lens, refusing. He clutched the cedar bark behind him, grounding himself, muttering fragments of the Buddhist prayer he'd remembered earlier. The spirits recoiled slightly, but their fury ignited. The ground trembled under his feet, and the mist thickened to the point where he could barely breathe. Then from the circle of trees, a faint glow appeared, not from his camera, not from his phone, but from a small wooden plaque wedged between the cedar roots. It bore faded writing, barely legible in the flickering light. Desperate, Kenji scraped away moss and dirt until the words revealed themselves. Never record, never remember, only release. The meaning struck him like a blow. The shrine hadn't been built to honor or contain, it had been designed to erase. Every priest before had known the truth. If anyone carried the memory of these spirits away, they could never rest, and Kenji had done exactly that. The plaque's message seared itself into Kenji's mind, and with it came a horrifying realization. Every image he'd captured, every photograph stored neatly on his memory card wasn't just evidence, it was a chain. The more he clung to those pictures, the stronger the spirit's tether became. He was carrying their prison in his hands, stitching them into his world with every frame. A voice rose above the others, distinct and commanding, no longer the soft lures of the grandmother or the child. This was older, deeper, an echo from centuries past. Show us, it demanded. Show us the world again. Through you we will walk it. Kenji's breath came in ragged bursts. He opened his camera, scrolling through the images. Dozens of faces glared back, pale and desperate, pressing toward the lens. Their outlines had sharpened, their eyes gleamed with hunger. Some smiled as if triumphant, others reached out with hands that seemed ready to pierce through the screen. The cedar grove shuddered as if the earth itself was rebelling. Branches cracked overhead, raining splinters around him. His body screamed to run, but every path outside the circle was blocked by a swirling wall of figures, all waiting, all reaching. Then among them, Kenji spotted Tishi again, the modern photographer turned spirit. His expression was more human than the rest, eyes wide with urgency, not malice. Through the static of whispers, his voice broke through clear. Delete them, now, or they'll use you the way they used me. Kenji's finger hovered above the delete button, and the chanting stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It pressed into his skull, into his bones, a suffocating quiet that made the forest itself feel dead. The spirits froze in place, their faces rigid, eyes fixed on the camera, like predators holding their breath before the strike. Kenji's thumb trembled against the button. One press and the memories would be gone. Proof erased, his career shattered. He'd return to Tokyo with nothing but a story no one would believe. But if Tishi was right, that sacrifice was his only chance at survival. Release us, the old voice whispered, low and commanding. Do not destroy, we are owed. Kenji glanced down. His camera screen flickered, displaying not just photos but short clips, moments he had never filmed. A woman sobbing in flames, a man bleeding into the dirt, a procession of villagers bound in ropes. The spirits had been feeding his device memories, embedding their agony directly into its circuits. His pulse thundered in his ears. If he pressed delete, was he freeing them, or damning them further? What if the plaque had been a warning not to forget, but to never record it all? Tishi's figure moved closer, pushing against the tide of spirits. His voice came again, fractured, desperate. I tried to keep them. I thought proof would matter. That's why I never left. The faces on Kenji's screen began to twist, no longer pleading but smiling, hungry smiles. They weren't asking for freedom anymore. They wanted him to hesitate. Kenji's hands clenched around the camera, knuckles white. He had seconds to decide. The cedar grove quaked, the trees groaning under unseen weight. Spirits pressed closer to the boundary, their shapes bending and snapping like shadows caught in a storm. The plaque's warning echoed in his skull. Never record, never remember, only release. His grandmother's voice followed. Come inside, and then Tishi, delete them. Every side screamed at him, every choice dripping with consequences. He felt his body tilt forward, pulled toward the shrine. His thumb pressed down. One image vanished. Instantly the nearest spirit shrieked and dissolved into mist. Another deletion, another shriek, another vanishing. The grove erupted in fury. Spirits hurled themselves against the invisible barrier, clawing at the air, howling in rage as their ranks thinned with each press of the button. The air stank of burned incense and rotting flowers. His screen shook in his hand, resisting him, flickering between images of his photos and warped faces snarling back at him. Kenji screamed as he pressed again and again, his fingers numb, his vision blurring. Each deletion felt like tearing open his own chest, but the weight around him lessened. The oppressive silence cracked into chaos, then faded, and then, nothing. The grove fell still. The mist dissipated. The air warmed. His camera screen turned black, empty. No photos, no spirits. Kenji staggered to his knees, gasping. He had survived, but when he raised his head, the cedar grove was no longer empty. One figure remained, Tishi, and he was smiling. Tishi's form lingered at the edge of the cedar grove, more solid than before. His face, once frantic with warning, now carried an unsettling calm. The mist had vanished. The grove was quiet, yet his presence bent the air like heat above asphalt. Kenji swallowed hard, clutching the now empty camera. It's over, he whispered. I deleted them. They're gone. But Tishi shook his head. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You think deleting breaks the cycle? No, Kenji. You've only shifted it. His voice was clearer now, human in tone but sharpened with something beneath. They used me, and now they've chosen you. Kenji's stomach twisted. No, I fought them. I ended it. The spirit tilted his head, almost pitying. Did you, or did you only give them what they wanted? Release from their prison, one soul at a time. They're gone because they followed the images. You didn't destroy them. You carried them into yourself. A cold weight settled on Kenji's chest, heavier than any camera strap. He remembered the flicker on the screen before it went black, the faces warping, smiling. Had they been dissolving or entering him? His breath came shallow, fogging in the night air, though the forest was warmer now. Every shadow seemed to lean toward him. Every creak of the cedar trees sounded like a step closer. Tishi's form leaned in, his smile breaking into a grimace. I tried to warn you. Now you'll see what I became, and when it happens, no one will believe your story either. Kenji staggered backward, his boots scraping against roots. No, I destroyed the images. They can't follow me if there's nothing left. Tishi's face flickered, half transparent, half real, like a badly tuned channel. You misunderstand. Photos capture fragments, but the act of recording, that's the bridge. Every time you pressed the shutter, you carved a path wider. By deleting, you only locked them inside the last vessel standing. He pointed one finger toward Kenji's chest. Kenji's heartbeat thundered, every pulse echoing with phantom whispers. He shook his head violently. That's not possible. Listen, the forest was silent, too silent. Yet beneath it, deep inside his skull, came a faint chorus. Not outside, not in the air, inside him. The whispers he'd thought were fading now pulsed behind his eardrums, layered, hungry. Kenji dropped the camera as if it burned, clutching his ears. No, you're lying. Tishi's grin sharpened. I told myself the same thing. I clung to denial, but the more I resisted, the louder they became. Eventually, they don't whisper, they speak through you. And when that happens, he leaned close, his voice dropping into a hiss. You stop being you. Kenji backed into the cedar trunk, the bark digging into his spine. His breaths came in ragged bursts. His body trembled, yet deep within, he felt it, a faint pressure, as if something was pushing from the inside outward, searching for cracks. Why me? He choked. Tishi's eyes glowed faintly, the human fading from his expression. Because you answered, and once you answer, you belong. Kenji stumbled from the cedar grove, branches whipping at his face. The trail twisted and bent like a serpent, every turn spitting him back toward the shrine. His phone, dim in his hand, flickered with symbols instead of numbers, ancient strokes that rearranged themselves into eyes. They blinked when he blinked. The whispers in his head grew louder, overlapping, until they formed words. Not one voice, but dozens. Male, female, child, elder, all speaking through his own breath. Stay with us. Walk our steps. Open your skin so we may breathe again. Kenji pressed his palms to his ears, but the voices thundered within. Each step forward felt like dragging chains, every muscle urging him to stop, to kneel, to surrender. And then he saw it, his camera. He had left it in the grove, yet here it lay in the dirt of the trail ahead. Its cracked screen glowed faintly, showing not his reflection but hundreds of faces pressed against glass, their mouths moving soundlessly. His throat locked. He knew instinct screamed not to touch it, but his hand moved on its own, fingertips brushing cold plastic. The moment he made contact, the voices surged like a tidal wave, and for an instant he wasn't in the forest at all. He stood among them, figures stretching into infinity, their hands clutching, their faces hollow yet pleading. Some cried, some laughed, all reached for him, dragging him deeper into their endless dusk. Kenji tore his hand away, gasping, the forest snapping back around him. But now he knew, the camera hadn't trapped them, it had marked him. Kenji collapsed to his knees, his vision swimming. The ground beneath him pulsed faintly, as though veins ran through the soil. Every tree root writhed in his peripheral sight, shifting closer when he blinked. The whispers shifted tone. They weren't pleading anymore. They were instructing, move your hand, carve the air, trace the path we show you. His fingers twitched without his command, sketching invisible sigils before him. No, he screamed, slamming his fist into the earth until pain broke the trance. Blood smeared across fallen leaves, dark and glistening. The voices sighed with something like satisfaction. Yes, blood, that will do. His chest tightened, breaths coming shallow. He staggered upright and stumbled back toward the cedar grove, hoping the protective symbols still held power. But the grove was gone. The trees loomed behind him, yet when he turned, all he saw was endless forest in every direction. The shrine, the grove, the trail, vanished as if they had never been. He was adrift in a maze of shifting paths, and every direction bent back into shadow. Then the air thinned, cold sweeping down his spine. Tishi stood there again, only now his body wasn't transparent. It was solid, human. His eyes glowed faintly, but his skin looked warm. His breath fogged in the night air. They used me up, Tishi said, voice flat. Now they're filling you. It doesn't take long. Kenji's stomach churned. He could see it. Tishi was no longer spirit nor man. He was something in between. A vessel emptied, waiting, and Kenji was next. Kenji bolted, his legs pumping with a desperation he didn't know he had. Branches clawed at his face, the forest closing tighter, the faster he ran. His phone buzzed in his pocket, vibrating violently. Against his will, he pulled it free. The screen glowed blood red. A call was coming through. Unknown number. Time, 11:47. His pulse spiked. He hadn't touched the shrine's cursed mask, hadn't answered the mysterious calls of Tokyo, but the pattern was the same. They weren't bound to objects or places anymore. They were inside him. The phone kept buzzing. His thumb hovered over decline, shaking. The whispers slithered through his skull. Answer, answer, and we will show you everything. You will never be alone again. Kenji hurled the phone against a rock. It shattered into fragments, screen splintering like ice. For a moment silence fell. He breathed, ragged, chest heaving. Relief threatened to wash over him. Then from the shards, light bled upward. Dozens of small glowing figures, pale and skeletal, rising like smoke. They drifted toward him, mouths opening in silent screams. Kenji screamed back, stumbling into the dark, but the forest offered no escape. The last thing he saw before tripping and collapsing was Tishi's figure waiting calmly at the end of the path, eyes hollow, arms open like a friend welcoming him home. The world tilted. The whispers surged one last time, filling his head until his own thoughts vanished, and when silence returned, only the forest remained, empty, ordinary, as if Kenji had never walked it at all. And so Kenji's story drifts into silence, swallowed by the mist that clings to forgotten shrines. A photographer who sought beauty but stumbled upon something older, hungrier, and less forgiving than time itself. Did he escape, or did he simply become another shadow among the cedar trees, another whisper waiting for dusk to fall? We will never know. But perhaps that's the point. Some doors are not meant to be opened, some voices are not meant to be answered, and some places should remain forever unseen. So the next time you find yourself standing at the edge of an abandoned shrine, when the forest grows too still and the air feels heavy with memory, remember Kenji, remember what he saw, what he lost, and what he could never carry back with him. Because not every path takes you home, and not every story ends with the living. Thank you for watching tonight. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, goodbye.